Hey there, welcome to Board Game Hot Takes, the podcast where we give our immediate reactions to the hottest board games just minutes after playing them. My name's Tim.
And this is Chris.
This is Adam.
Instead of giving our hot take review on a game we just finished playing, we're going to be talking about the crowdfunded games that we're most excited to receive coming up soon. So we've done this series every year since we started the show. This will be our fourth annual episode. Will it be our last? I don't know. It seems like our lists are getting pretty short here. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But we're going to be basically taking a look at the list that we had last year about the games that we were really anticipating. We'll take a look back, see if we received them, what we thought of them. And then we'll talk about the top 5 that we have incoming this year. I really like this series because it gives me a chance. I haven't thought about many of these games for a while. So it gives me a chance to kind of revisit them, get excited about the games that I backed at one point again and be refreshed on them. And so I love this conversation. It's fun also to take a look back and see what we messed up with last year.
Remember how back in the olden days, we used to call it top 5 Kickstarters? Because all we had was Kickstarter, and now we have more options. So it's crowdfunding.
Yeah. In fact, I had to go and look on 3 different sites this time, not just Kickstarter, to find all my old backings from this year. So only found 6 total. How'd you guys do? How many did you guys have backed this year?
I've only got 8 this year. I mean, it is a dramatic change from the early days when I was just buying, like I was backing Kickstarter a week, it seemed like, or excuse me, a crowdfunded game a week. And now I've backed off that so much that it's, I'm starting to run out of good options. I had to work hard just to not have a bunch of the same games in my list this year that I had last year, which probably also is a really bad sign about how long it takes to get these things delivered.
Yeah, that's a great point, Chris. I went and looked and I was like, man, I could talk about all these games. I was like, oh, shoot, I already talked about those over the last 2-3 years. They're still not here yet. So there's a couple, I had to dig around to find 5, 6, I think I ended up with 7 or 8 also that I haven't talked about previously. One of those I just backed this week. And then a few more of those, were this year or within the last year. And all the other ones are longer than that. So some interesting crowdfunding happenings going on.
So look, before we get too much further into this topic, I always ask a poll question on social media, and we'll talk about that now. But this poll question actually happens to be relevant to the episode. The question I asked is, do you have any incoming Kickstarter or crowdfunded board games that you haven't received, but you regret backing? So, we're going to be talking about our top 5 this year, but were there any that you backed that are definitely not going to make your list because you regret it? Here's the options I gave on social media. So I said, yes, many, and that got a response of 8%. Yes, 1 or 2 was also at 8%. No, I want them all was at 62%. And no, I don't crowdfund games was at 22%. So the vast majority of people that do crowdfund games seem to be happy with the things that they've backed and are still excited about them. How did you guys fall on this question?
I definitely have games that I've backed that I'm not looking forward to getting at this point. But the reality is I generally don't find that I'm really disappointed in the game till after I get it. So it's a little harder to say at this point about games that I haven't received yet. I've got a whole list of games that I've backed that I'm like, yeah, I wish I really hadn't done that. Or if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't have done it. But the one I picked for this list, a game that I haven't received yet and wish I hadn't backed at this point, is Hyperspace by Peterson Games. And honestly, it's not even because the game doesn't look cool. The game still looks kind of cool, but I'm just so over Peterson Games at this point. This thing got funded in February 2019. Can you believe that? February 2019. That was like pre-pandemic. We lived in a whole different universe back then. That's like 4 years ago. It's kind of a disgrace. There's another Peterson game that I just received. Forget the name of it. It was the expansion for Cthulhu.
Demon Sultan.
Yeah, Demon Sultan. Yep. That one funded even earlier than Hyperspace did. I think that was like in 2018. I mean, it's absolutely shocking. So that one, I think I will go out on a limb and say I'm kind of sorry I backed it, partially because I'm irritated with Peterson Games and partially because I've got Eclipse now. What do I need Hyperspace for? It's going to be like, Eclipse Light. So anyway, that's mine for that list.
It's funny that you mentioned that one, Chris, because I went just to kind of get ready for this episode. I went back and listened to our last 2 years episodes, and I'm pretty sure you mentioned Hyperspace 2 years ago as being one of your top 5 most anticipated crowdfunded games or Kickstarted games. So it's funny now that it still hasn't shipped and now it's not as desirable anymore. The only game that I wanted to mention on here, and kind of the reason I asked the question, there's 2 really. One was I've got Cthulhu Death May Die. I really like that game. And somebody told me that CMON releases a series of graphic novels related to their games. And usually when they do, they release some exclusive game content with it. So I took a look at it, and there was this Cthulhu Death May Die graphic novel that came out, and it had a special, unique scenario and a couple, figures that could go with it that only came with this graphic novel. And I was like, it was $30. I was like, cool, $30. I'll probably look through this graphic novel. I'm not that excited about it, but I get this extra gameplay content that I can't get anywhere else. I'm going to back it. I backed it, and the next day I looked at the receipt on it, and I realized that the shipping for this $30 graphic novel was $36.43.
No.
So what I thought was like a $30, hey, some gameplay content with a little add-on is now a $60 one scenario, and what a stupid waste of money that was. And the other one I'm going to be talking about in my top 5 anticipated ones. But the thing I regretted about it is that there's one Kickstarter that I backed way too much. Like I should have just gotten one thing in the Kickstarter. I'm still excited about that. And I went all in, and I regret that. That was unnecessary. It was dumb of me to do that. But I'll talk about that more coming up here. How about you, Adam? Anything you've regretted backing?
Oh my gosh. This is shameful, you guys. I have a bunch. There's one from way, way back at the beginning of time. Sweet Mess. They gave an option to change your pledge. It was such a disaster. They felt sorry for all the original backers. They gave an option to change it to the game with art by Andrew Bosley. I forget the name of the game, but the same company kind of picked it up. So I was able to change my pledge out of that. I want no association with that game and the original owner, developer, whoever. I think his face is still on the box. I don't want that thing near my house or my family. Yeah, the Peterson games, there's a giant box of Cthulhu Wars stuff. Kid size, how there's like a kid size drink and it's actually the size of a kid. This box is actually the size of a kid. So it's sitting over here. I regret that. I don't want it. Somebody buy it off me, please. And then somebody be willing to pay the $200 of shipping it's also going to cost to ship to you. That'd be great. Hyperspace, same, Chris. I'm just disenchanted with Peterson games as well. I want nothing to do with them anymore. So you see a lot of bad memories surrounding some of these crowdfunded games here. Maybe Tim was right. I don't want to say it. Maybe Tim was right a little bit about some of these. Oh, then Chazin Azadi. I don't know. That game just seemed like it had beautiful art. And now there's some sort of hiccups, and I don't know if the game's ever going to happen on that one either. Current disappointment and likely continuing future disappointment. There's a few out there that I have regrets on.
Well, Adam, I can tell you one guy who's not going to be buying that truckload of Cthulhu Wars stuff off of you. And that's me, because I got all the same mess of stuff. And Tim, if it makes you feel any better, I actually did back the previous version. This is the second version they did of that Cthulhu Death May Die with the graphic novel and the extra scenario in the characters. I did the last one. It probably was not worth it. The graphic novel was okay. I mean, it was not a particularly good graphic novel. And I've got these, I don't know, was it 3 extra figures that I've never used?
I wonder if it's the same graphic novel and the same figures. I assume it probably is.
I don't think so. Okay. I think they did a second round where they did different ones, but I get your point.
Yeah, $60. So dumb.
Yep.
Here's how some listeners answered. So Blake Whitaker said, I feel the FOMO style of marketing baits people into backing things they normally wouldn't by FOMO fare. I really detest the marketing strategy, but at the same time, don't see any option to stop it since so many people seem fine with it. Yeah. And, Blake, it's not even that people seem fine with it. It's that is the main reason why companies even use Kickstarter anymore. It's not usually because they actually need to raise the funds. Like, you don't see games out there that are like incomplete or don't have finished artwork yet. I mean, they've already invested all the time and money into most of these games. What they're really using it for is a marketing strategy and using these like exclusives to try to get you to pay money up front. And it's like a free loan to them. So again, I've talked about this for years, but I think with the shipping costs going up, I think Kickstarter is a worse deal than it's ever been, and it's continuing to pull people in and maybe spend money where they shouldn't be. Court Jensen said, I have a rule of 3, no more than 3 incoming, to make myself be more selective in what I back. I think that's great. I think that's really smart because there is occasionally games. In fact, one that I regret not backing recently was that Cyclades Kickstarter. I don't need to because I'm sure it will come to retail and whatever version comes to retail will be just fine. But boy, do I want that game come into my house as soon as I can get it. So, there's the occasional one that really feels like, God, this really speaks to me. I want this, or maybe the couple exclusive things with it. But I think by setting a hard rule like that, it will definitely make you look really hard and fast, whether you want to take up one of those spots. I think that's awesome. And then Tanner Short said, nope, I don't back dumb games I don't care about. Okay, Tanner. Well, glad you got it figured out better than we do.
Can't argue with that.
I'm a big fan of backing dumb games. I do it way too often.
Haven't we all?
The funny thing is, Adam, you mentioned that sweet mess, and they let you take, like get another game instead, but you don't even know what that game is. So you're not getting this game that you wanted years ago. Instead, you're getting some other game you don't even know what it is. So hopefully, it's better.
Yeah, the art by somebody reputable,
Nice.
so maybe somebody will buy it.
All right. Well, let's take a look back at last year's list fairly quickly here. What we're going to do is I'll just run down our top 5 from last year, and we'll just talk really quickly about whether we received it, what we thought about it. It's just fun to look back at these. Interestingly, I received most of the games that I had on my list last year. So this is cool. I get to talk through these. My number 5 last year was the Reiner Knizia game Ra. This was a new, very updated and deluxe edition of Ra. And I was pretty sure I was going to like this game because I'd had a chance to play the older one right before this came out on Kickstarter. And I was right. I've received it. It is an amazing production, and it is still an amazing game. I had a ton of fun with it. I've taught it to several groups. So Ra was a big hit for me. I'm really excited about it. Maybe didn't need to spend $100 on this game because it was a pretty expensive game for what it is, a fairly light little bidding game, but really fantastic. I'm glad I have it in my collection. So Adam, your number 5 last year was Red Dust Rebellion. Have you received that one yet?
No, it's still getting closer along the way in the process of actually becoming a game that I can play that will be delivered to my house, but I think it's still months away.
Are you still excited about it?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it's backburnered. Once it gets here, I'm sure, I think I'll be very interested in checking it out and playing around with it. But as of right now, I've just kind of erased it from my brain, or tried to anyway, and just trying not to think about it.
It's amazing how a couple years in, that FOMO starts to fade away, doesn't it?
Sure does.
Chris, your number 5 last year was Distilled.
Yeah, I mean, that one was a shining example of the instances where crowdfunding works. It's a great game. I don't know if they needed to use crowdfunding for it, but it's a terrific game. We've played it. We'll hopefully be playing it this week at Portland Con. So that one, I would say, was a 100% rousing success.
I agree on that one. I'm so glad you got it. That was my first request when Chris asked what games should we all get together and play in person. That was the one I was like, we got to play Distilled again. So totally on board with that. My number 4 last year was Wayfarers of the South Tigris. This was a game we had already played and reviewed one time online, so I was really excited about this game. I did receive it, I think, just a couple months after our episode came out last year. It's a great game still. I still love the game a lot. I didn't keep it. I think the game is a little bit heavier than it needs to be, and so it's hard to teach. It's hard to get to the table, and so I just made space in my collection for it. I didn't need to back it. This is in retail now. I could have just picked it up for $50 in retail. So this is an example of like, why did I back it? It was kind of dumb to do that, but it's a good game. It got delivered when it was expected to. It was a great production. Everything else was positive about that experience. Adam, your number 4 was One Deck Galaxy, which I think we've all talked about to some extent. How do you feel about that one today?
Yeah, at least what I can say for it is that it came here, it arrived, and I gave it a shot, but it wasn't for me. So it's on its way out. If I can get it out of here, there's too much tucking, too much of this. A solid chunk of the rulebook wasn't in there, which made it extra confusing and disappointing. So at least it didn't cost that much.
Yeah. That is the one nice thing about a $20 game is a lot different than a $100 game.
Yeah.
Chris, your number 4 last year was Voidfall. Have you received it yet?
No, which you guys know, because I think you backed it as well.
I was hoping you'd get an early rush on it.
Yeah, no, I think it's actually shipping not too long from now, hopefully. So, and honestly, whether or not I'm excited about it is going to depend largely on how I feel when I bust this one out and play it again, because it's been so long now. Is it 2 years since we reviewed that game almost?
Yeah.
It was October of 2021, I think.
Yep.
And I remember having a good time with it, enough that I played it and then backed it, but I don't remember it well enough to be like, wow, man, I can't wait to get back in and do this, that, or the other thing. Then again, it has a beautiful production, and it's always fun unboxing a good production game, and the fact that we played it and liked it. So I'm probably moderately excited about it to potentially more excited about it if I get it out and I'm like, oh yeah, this is why I liked it and backed it in the first place.
Yeah, this was my number 3 and Adam's number 3 last year as well. So we all had it on our list. We're all excited about it. I still am. I've looked at some of the recent, updates on it. The production looks amazing. I'm concerned about getting it played. One of the reasons I was willing to back it because there is a solo mode on it, but I'm not really playing games this heavy solo these days, so that's unlikely to get a lot of use. But if it's something I get out once a year with a group that's ready to sit down for 4 or 5 hours and play a big heavy Euro space game, I think it's going to be rad still. So I'm definitely looking forward to playing it again. Don't know that I needed to to own this huge $200 version of it, but I think it'll still be fun. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you guys. I think it's going to be something pretty special and pretty unique. At least I hope. Early reports are that it's a pretty fascinating, outstanding game. So I'm looking forward. I'm getting a little excited about it for it to get here. Just the latest update from Kickstarter as August 29th. And today is September 4th. Some people in Michigan have already received their game, and they're shipping worldwide is what it sounds like. And people are receiving them worldwide as we speak.
Yeah, so maybe Chris, maybe we'll get it this week and we'll get to play it next weekend.
Isn't it amazing that, I don't know, if it was like maybe $150 back on Kickstarter, and if all three of us did it, that's roughly $450 that got spent so that we could each have this game and play one game a year when we get together. And wherever we go, whether it's in Portland or Long Beach or Arizona, we'll have a copy there ready to go. That was quite an investment.
We're prepped.
I do have a group. I have a couple people around here that I think will play it with me. So who knows? Maybe I'll get more plays of it than just with you guys. But we'll see. If not, I bet you can sell it for a couple $100 if you don't wait too long on it. So there's that. Yeah. Chris, your number 3 was Star Realms: Rise of Empires, which was the legacy version of Star Realms. Have you gotten that yet?
Haven't gotten it yet, but I am still looking forward to it. And that's all I'll say about that at this point.
All right. Sounds good. My number 2 was Sleeping Gods: Distant Skies, which I'm still excited about. I think it's maybe going into production now, so it hasn't been delivered yet anywhere. I think it may be still a ways out, maybe 6 months or more before I actually get it. But I'm still really excited about it. They actually had the original version of Sleeping Gods on that Game Nerd sale a couple weeks ago, which is always a pretty big discount. And I saw it was coming up, and I literally told my friend, I was like, if it's under $50, I'm just going to pick this one up and start playing this one. And it was like $51, and I was like, just missed the mark. So I'll wait for the streamlined version, Distant Skies. But I'm still looking forward to it. I think it could be really fun.
Way to stay strong, Tim.
Such a rule follower.
Adam, your number 2 was Arcs. You still excited?
I don't know. I hope I'm not excited, Tim. I am not excited for Arcs. I hope it's fun. It seems like it's changed a lot since we played it, which I enjoyed the version we played. It's probably gotten better with cooler stuff and a prettier map, but I don't know. I looked at the map and it looked a little less whimsical and a little more structured, which I guess is good and bad. So I guess that's the bad thing about playing an early version. If you enjoyed it, then it's going to change. We'll see. I'm not overly excited about Arcs.
Chris, how about Lords of Ragnarok? That was your number 2 last year.
I got it. It's here. We're going to be playing it this weekend when we get together for Portland Con. I won't say much about it now because I'm sure I'll have more to say about it, but I learned the game this weekend, and it's about as dense and fiddly a rule set as I have ever seen in my life. But at the same time, I can see some fun shining through there. So it'll be really interesting to see how getting the 4 of us around the table, if I can even manage to make it through a teach of this game, how that goes, because it seems right now like it could go either way. But it's here, it came, the production, as with everything Awaken Realms does, is phenomenal, and I'm excited to get it to the table. We'll see how I feel about it at the end of the weekend.
This is going to be one of those weekends where we spend 5 days together and we get like 4.5 games played or something like that, isn't it?
If we're lucky.
All right. Well, getting to our number 1s from last year. So my number 1 last year was La Granja Deluxe Master Set. And if we're lucky, we're going to be playing this about the time that people are listening to this episode, because I'm also bringing that. This is one of the few games I'm bringing up to Portland next weekend. I'm really excited. I've had a chance to get this out, and I did play a solo game just because I wanted to, kind of refresh it, get to play it in person. I've only ever played this on Board Game Arena, you guys, even though I've played like 30, 40 games of it. And I am so excited to share this with you. The production is amazing. Out of those, what are they, the market cards or whatever, but the cards you can add to your tableau, it's about double the stack of extra cards that they added into this thing. Now, there's a whole bunch of other expansion modules, which I'm not even going to bring up with me because I'm trying to pack light. But looks like other fun things to explore if this gets played more. But I'm excited on this game. I really like it.
I'm excited for this one, too. This is going to sound, I don't think there's any way around. It's going to sound creepy, but I'm excited to be the peddler when that card comes out. I'm going to put that in my tableau and not get bumped out of my market or out of my market spots. And I'm going to move from my 4 spot to my 6 spot. It's going to be rad.
If you actually get that one, Adam, considering the fact that there's like twice as many cards in this deck, I'm going to quit. I'm going to raise a drink to you for sure. Like I'm buying all the drinks for the weekend. If you
Chris is going to quit, Tim's going to raise a drink to me. I'll take both of those things.
Such different reactions.
Chris has obviously been burned by it a little bit more.
So many times. So burned.
All right, Adam, your number 1 was Skyrise, and I think this has been waiting for a bit. Have you gotten this one yet?
I haven't gotten this one either. there. So scorecarding this one, I'm received one that I didn't like, and I haven't got the other 4. So that's not a good percentage.
That's rough, dude. Do you know when this one's supposed to arrive? Do you have any updates on it?
The latest update was they just redid their washes on their miniatures that are going to come with this thing. And it's just buildings. And a lot of people are like, oh, I don't care about the washes. Just send me the game already. And they're like, this is the longest it's ever taken us to make a game, but it's good. We're excited because it's going to be beautiful. So yeah, no specific date yet, but I'm sure, I don't know. Everything seems like it's 4 to 5 months. And I think Chinese New Year's coming up too. So add that into the mix.
Yeah. Wasn't that a game? That was like a remake of a game too, right? So they didn't really probably have to do too much development with it, I would assume. So it's all been just production is what they've been doing.
I think it's just all production, making these goofy miniatures. They look beautiful, I think, these buildings. So when it does get here, I'm excited for it to get here and to play the game, which has good roots.
Cool. Chris, your number 1 last year was Batman Gotham City Chronicles Season 3. How's that coming along?
Haven't gotten it yet. Still excited.
All right, cool. All right, well, that was last year's list. A few things delivered, everything except for what Adam ordered, apparently. So hopefully he does better this year around. So we're going to talk about the top 5 games we're excited about this year. And let's just jump right in. What are you guys looking forward to?
So here we go. Last year, it was an interesting list. This year, I think it's an equally interesting list. And I tried really hard, like I said, to not do a bunch of repeats, even though my list of games that I'm waiting for is not huge. And you probably gathered from my lack of commentary on a couple of games earlier that there are going to be a couple of overlaps. That was just unavoidable. But I actually want to start with a game that is... It's not my number 5. I'll get there in a moment, but it is, I don't know if this is the honorable mention or a dishonorable mention, but it's a game I'm still excited about, which is Dawn of Madness, which funded in December 2019. So almost as shameful as the Peterson situation. And this is a game I've been so excited about. And at this point, I just feel like I can't put it on my list because it's on my list every year. And it doesn't deserve to be because it's not here yet. They're still making content for this game. And it sounds so scary and so macabre and so interesting that I still want to see it. But I'm so frustrated that it's taken this long to get it out. So I can't add it to the list in a spot of honor. I have to give it this sort of, I don't even know what you call that, but it's like a sketchy side.
Interesting note.
An interesting side note.
Chris, don't you think that, so there's a team of guys that, were publishing this game. They put out a Kickstarter, made several $100,000. Like, how could they actually even have the money left to produce it at this point if they're putting this much time into it? Like, unless they just haven't touched those funds. But do you think it's possible that this game might not even be created, or do you feel pretty confident that it's going to come out at some point?
They still send out regular updates with new art that's being shown, and they actually have this percentage of this thing that's done, percentage of that thing that's done, and it changes every time. So either they're just completely lying, or they're actually making progress on it. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and hope that they're actually making progress. I think some of the miniatures and whatnot have actually gone to production already. So that's a weird situation. That's why I don't want to say too much about it, because I don't want to dwell on this oddity that may or may not end up materializing at some point. But enough to say that I'm still intrigued by it. I'm still looking forward to it. I could end up being sorely disappointed at the end of all that. But now to the actual proper list. My number 5 this year is Wolves. This is a game that we just reviewed a few weeks ago. Wolves is designed by Connor Alexander and is published by Coyote and Crow Games. I'm super excited about this one because, for one, I feel like the production that we saw when we played this game online, it was pretty minimalist. And it's hard to tell when you're looking at that kind of a minimalist production on Tabletop Simulator whether it's going to translate into something nice in your hand when you're playing it or not. And I want to be surprised at how nice this feels when I actually touch this game and play this game. But the experience of doing it was unique, if nothing else. I think we all commented on that, whether it's something that you're going to be busting out regularly for game night or not. It's a really interesting social experiment. How the people you play with react to this game, whether they're willing to give up the big win in favor of keeping the community alive, and just overall a fascinating game, really interesting. And I want to get that one on the table. I want to open up that box and see what they end up doing with the production and then giving it a shot, because it was absolutely intriguing as a review game when we did it a couple months ago.
My number 5 this year is really just an expansion for a game that I already love. So I'm reasonably excited about it, but the expansion is kind of a small expansion. This is the Shards of Madness expansion for Wonderland's War. Now, the expansion itself looks okay. Basically, it seems like it swaps out I think it's the Wonderlandian deck primarily with things that are going to be more shard focused. So in other words, they're going to find ways for you to give madness to your opponents and stuff like that. That seems like it might be interesting, but I play this game fairly regularly, but I don't know if I play it often enough that I need to swap out the deck on that. There is some other things that come with that expansion, though, like unique asymmetric starting powers that start everybody with a unique Wonderlandian. I think that seems pretty cool. But the main reason I actually backed this expansion, the thing that I'm most excited about, is that it came with a couple add-ons. One of them was replacements for 2 of the character mats, and that's because they were considered imbalanced. And, I don't really care that much about balance, but I don't want people to feel like they don't have a good shot at winning or feel overpowered. So that's cool that they adjusted those, and I'm happy to get those. And then there was an add-on for basically like rubber bases that you could put on the bottom of the minis to represent your color when you picked one up, especially the Wonderlandians. And I think that was actually sorely needed, because when you have just a bunch of gray blobs of plastic out on the board, or even if they're painted, which mine are getting in that direction, it's hard to tell whose faction they're associated with. So I do like that that's something that will be available pretty soon, and I think that will help the playability of a lot. So this was a fairly inexpensive expansion. It was kind of a no-brainer just because of some of those things I do like about it, and looks like it's moving into production, and we'll hopefully be here well before we meet if we do this type of episode next year. Yeah, that's my number 5.
Before I do my number 5, I have an honorable mention. This is Envelopes of Cash, game by Andy Schwartz, who, just full disclosure, he sent a prototype copy over to me so I could play that, check it out, and talk about it. And this game's also on Board Game Arena. Played this game a bunch of times with him. Had a lot of fun playing this one. It's kind of a drafting game. You got to roll some dice, draft some envelopes of cash. You can use half of the value for now or the full value for later. And so you have to kind of determine that. And then you can use this cash in all kinds of different ways. You want to recruit these high school athletes to your sketchy college program, and it's kind of just a satirical view of college football program and how athletes don't get paid and bribes and how they do get paid in terms of bribes or fancy booze or houses for your family or this and that, all these different ways to lure athletes out of high school into college without them really getting paid. Looking forward to that one. As far as my number 5 pick, I don't think these are in any specific order. I'm kind of excited about all of these, but also tainted that any of these will actually get here and that I didn't just actually waste my money on all of these as well. But we'll see how it goes. So we'll start off with a game called Biohack. This one caught my eye. The art was pretty neat here. This is where you're like a mad scientist. You're going to craft these different kinds of monsters. So there's I think the box has like this giant dragon in a giant dragon egg. So it's a giant baby dragon in this egg with all these tubes attached to it. And you can see this thing looking out at these scientists with their clipboards, taking notes, looking at this guy. And it sounds either the color palette is beautiful. It's kind of dark and spooky, a lot of fluorescent pinks and blacks with these mythical monsters that you're trying to craft. So that was enough to get me on it. It looked pretty unique. It's out of, I don't know if it's Korea or Japan. Sorry. And this one only cost me 11,000 yen. Looking forward to this one. There's
Adam,
Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, sorry. No, I thought you were done. Sorry, go ahead.
I should be done because I don't know what I'll say about it. So you go, Chris.
This game has got an amazing box cover. I love the box cover art on this. And one of the things I like most about it is because that scene that you painted for us was, it's haunting and it's kind of creepy and weird with these giant eggs and these 2 scientists kind of standing there looking at it. But this little sunflower head looking anime dragon that's in there is kind of adorable. So it's this weird combination of creepy and adorable, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, it's so cute.
Yeah, the production on this looks rad. I'd never heard of this, and the card artwork looks really cool. These weird mixed up creatures. There's one that it looks like a shark head on an alligator body, but kind of cute at the same time. And there's several other weird mixes, like a fish and a lion. Yeah. So I guess that's a lionfish.
Oh,
that's hilarious.
Right.
But anyway, so there's, the production looks cool, like other components. Adam, what is the gameplay like here? Do you have any idea? Maybe you mentioned this, but
Tim, let's not worry about what the gameplay is like exactly. The art, I don't know what sold me on it. I think I read about it, briefly and gave it 2 minutes of attention. And that was enough to sell me on it, especially after this production and artwork. Mostly, I think the uniqueness of it, and I didn't think it was going to be a widespread release after. So it would be rare enough if it ever gets made that, I'd be able to move it on if it wasn't something I found too exciting. But it had me intrigued enough to pick it up, and maybe the kids will get into this one with all these cool looking monsters and stuff too. So that's why I backed and am pretty excited about Biohack.
Well, it looks great.
Yes.
I'm excited to try it.
That's what's important.
My number 4 this year is one of the 2 crossovers I'm going to have from last year's list. And it's Star Realms Rise of Empire, which funded last year in August 2022, has not arrived yet. But I'm so excited about this one. I think I'd mentioned before the reason for that when I did on the list last year. It's that my son loves deck building games, and he's really good at them. He pretty routinely beats me at Star Realms, and now we play Robot Quest Arena, which is by some of these same designers, same company. So the idea of taking one of my favorite games of all time, which is Star Realms, a game that I can play with my son, and adding in a legacy aspect to this game, I mean, you just can't go wrong. That to me is a win, 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 win. So I'm really excited to get that and to start the campaign with him because, my son is the one person I know with 100% certainty that I will make it through the campaign on this one and get through the whole legacy experience here. And that's pretty amazing. And before I forget, I will just add that Star Realms Rise of Empire was designed by Rob Doherty and Darwin Castle, and it's published by Wise Wizard Games.
Yeah, Chris, so I mean, you're breaking the rules by listing something from last year, but I'm glad you're still excited about it.
Yeah.
Didn't you start off by breaking the rules with talking about an expansion, Tim? I didn't was going to bring that up then, but now that we're talking about people breaking the rules.
Tim's really strict about some rules. Some rules are flexible.
I didn't know that expansions weren't allowed. I don't remember ever having that rule. I'm going to follow up with another expansion because, again, didn't realize this wasn't even part of the rule set here. But this is kind of a standalone expansion. This is Cthulhu Death May Die, Fear of the Unknown. I've talked about Cthulhu Death May Die on the show before. It is my favorite cooperative game, but it also is a great solo game. And it's just a super fun kind of little engine building, dice chucking romp. Fighting off the great old ones in a variety of scenarios. And I've always loved this game. I have season 1 and 2, but I didn't get it in the original Kickstarter, so I missed the Unspeakable box, which was this Kickstarter exclusive content. And I always felt like, darn it, I should have just backed that original campaign. So when this Cthulhu Death May Die, Fear of the Unknown campaign came out, they're releasing season 3 and season 4, of course. But not only that, you could also get the original Unspeakable box, plus another, the Unknowable box, which was another, exclusive, box of content for this Kickstarter, plus a number of add-ons like special monsters and some other things like that. Do I need this much Cthulhu Death May Die content? Absolutely not. I don't. And this is another regret that I have, to be honest, because the reason I actually really liked this season 3 scenario is that it does add a couple new rules that I think are really cool that you can add into any game. One of them is the fact that it allows you to kind of add in unknowable monsters. Basically, any monsters from other scenarios will randomly be seeded into that scenario, which was one of the complaints I used to have about it. You might play only 1 or 2 scenarios with any particular type of monster mini. So this is really cool. That's cool. And then they added this other thing. I think it's artifacts or something like that. But these little upgrades for the characters that are kind of unique. And I like that as well. So those were cool things. I could have added all that in and gotten all the content I needed with just one box of content. Instead, I went all in and backed everything here. Ended up spending like $391.85 on this campaign for a game that I play like twice a year. And I still have plenty of content that I haven't even gotten to yet. So I did want this. I'm excited to try the new content. I didn't need this much of it, so that was a big fail on my part. But otherwise, still excited about this. I think there's some cool new mechanisms that they added in here, and I'm looking forward to trying them out.
Well, I'm holding out for season 5 and the unbelievable box, or maybe even season 7 and the unreasonable box. I don't know. I'll see.
The funny thing is, I'm looking at my Kickstarter collection here, and I don't even see that unspeakable box on here. But I could have sworn I added it. Oh, there it is. Oh, nope, I did. Wow, I paid a lot for that box. Okay,
thank goodness.
Okay.
How bummed out would you have been there?
Jeez. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. Well, I regret this. I already had to explain to my wife about this charge on my credit card, which means that there's no more pain coming at this point, other than I just have to find a place to put all this stuff at some point.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I know that feeling well. We all know that feeling.
All right. Number 4 on my most anticipated Kickstarters list is Galactic Renaissance. This is a game by Christian Martinez, who designed Inish, which is one of my favorite games. I know you guys are like, on Inish, but I love it. And this game, again, its production and art look absolutely fantastic. You've got all these different planets. It looks like old school phone rotary dials. How awesome is that? That can't be bad with a game with rotary dials and lots of circular looking objects. That's different, right? So that has me intrigued. I don't know why, but that has me intrigued. Just the look and feel of this game. Go to the Kickstarter page, scroll through, look at the art, look at these specialists, look at these planets. It looks absolutely fantastic. There's a healthy serving of miniatures to go along with this. Maybe not too many, but enough to keep Chris involved and get him going with the game. So I think this has the potential to be an amazing game with amazing production. It's got good pedigree. Matago Games has been having some misses lately for me, but hopefully this one elevates them back up. I'm excited for it. That is Galactic Renaissance.
Name some names, Adam. What's a recent miss that you're thinking of from Matago?
Kemet, Blood and Sand. The rulebook was a disappointment for me. I felt like it wasn't super clear what was going on there. The gameplay, I didn't think it was all that interesting. You have this map that doesn't really matter. Everybody's within 2 regions of striking distance, or you can just portal here or portal there. I guess there's a lot of portals in this game too. So that one wasn't too great. There's another one, I think it was Yucatan, was by Matago Games, and that one just sounded like a huge I didn't back it or I haven't played it, but just from reviews I've heard of it, it sounded like a tremendous disappointment. Kemet, Blood and Sand and the Yucatan rulebook were just bad translations is what it sounded like from French to English. The latest update on Galactic Renaissance was specifically about sending the rulebook to their team in the United States to have it dissected and looked over and make sure it sounds good.
Well, I remember you talking about this one on the show. I think you did a future take on it, and I remember looking at the artwork then. It still looks really cool. So I'm, do you have any idea when this one's supposed to be delivered at this point?
I'm guessing, probably a year out still. Hopefully by this time next year I'll have something to say about it.
All right. Well, my number 3 is a game that we've talked about quite a bit. It's a updated production, not a new game. It's Teotihuacan Deluxe Master Set, which is designed by Danielle Tascini and published by Board and Dice. Interesting trajectory on this game because this one went at our review from a question mark, a little bit of a question mark for me, to a strong presence for me, to a favorite of mine, and now it's one that I really, really enjoy playing regularly. But even when I decided that I really liked the game, I was never 100% blown away by the production because I felt like there was so much going on. It was a little bit cluttered and I didn't fully get it. But then we played Tim's copy of it when we got together at our last con in Sedona. And I think putting that big old board out on the table in front of us really kind of made me a convert to the art in this game and the production of the board. And I like the fact that this game is going to step it up even more, this production, the Deluxe Master Set. Because basically they're taking what was already a pretty decent production for the live game at least, and making chunkier pieces, bigger, heavier tiles, heavier cardboard, some nice screen printed meeples, and various other nice little high quality components. And I didn't have the game already, so this wasn't replacing a previous copy that I'd already owned. So it's a game I love, and I figured if I can go and get the Deluxe Master Set now with all those upgraded production pieces, this is the time to do it. And so I am thrilled for that one. Now, this one only funded in May of 2023, so just a couple months ago. So I have a feeling it's going to take a little while to get this one delivered. So who knows? Maybe this one will be on my list again next year.
So this is by Board and Dice, who did the La Granja Deluxe Master Set, which I received. And I'm generally a pretty big fan of their productions, and I thought they handled their Kickstarter pretty well. It turned out exactly how expected. I don't remember if it came in on time, but it wasn't too long. It was a pretty quick turnaround. So if it's similar, Chris, I'm expecting you'll get this in about a year.
That'd be great.
I had a chance to play Board and Dice's latest big production, Barcelona, this last week, and I'll be talking more about that on an upcoming episode. But I can tell you that, again, they knocked it out of the park with the production. So I think you have something pretty exciting to look forward to when you get this.
Great.
All right, my number 3 is one that was on Adam's list last year, and this is Arcs. And I was I had not added it to my list last year because I was a little nervous about the direction the development was going with it. One of the reasons that I really liked this game when we first played was because it felt like a pretty streamlined game, something that I haven't experienced from Cole Wehrle in the past. And I thought maybe this will be, an opportunity to try that out and get some cool little campaign going that's pretty streamlined. But everything I've read about the development and the production since then seems like it's going the opposite of streamlined. I could be wrong about that. I'm still excited about it. I'm still excited about the idea of potentially being able to play through a 3-game campaign of an epic game like this within, an afternoon, 5 or 6 hours. So if that still comes together, I think this could still be a really cool game. I agree with Adam. I don't like the new board layout at all. But again, I'm going to kind of wait and see how the game interacts with it. I feel like maybe it will be a little more dynamic and flexible than the old board would have been, but I sure liked, I was charmed by the old board, not so much anymore. So this is one I'm still, I'd say, tentative about, but excited enough for it to make number 3 on my list. That's Arcs.
Interesting to see where this one goes from the time we played it to how it ends up.
Yeah.
My number 3 is a game called Star Tycoon. I'll give you guys a second to type that in and look it up.
There is no way that this game is good, Adam. I'm not even going to look it up.
Wow. That was definitive.
Yeah, wow. That was quick judgment. That's a very snap judgment, Tim.
What got you to back Star Tycoon?
Have you looked at this thing? It looks amazing. I'll tell you what got me back. It has it's an economic game, right? So it looks a little bit like A Wonderful World, which I thought was a pretty fun game, surprisingly. And it has this market system, kind of like Clans of Caledonia, I think. At least that's what it looks like to me. I enjoy these kind of economic entanglement games. Anything with a little stock market, I enjoy a lot because I am very good at buying high and selling low. I like to continue that into my board games as I play them. So that, along with, I'm a sucker for outer space themes, and there's a lot of humor in this game as well. So you've got these like sketchy looking business space characters, and the name of the card is Legitimate Ventures LLC. I think that's fantastic. There's a lot of references to like Star Trek. I think the dude is very much of a Star Trek nerd, so I can get on board with that. So there's a lot of references not only to Star Trek, but to other sci-fi pop culture things. So that has me sold. There's this dude looking like a Ferengi on the Kickstarter page. How can you resist that? What else? The art does it for me. It's charming. I went in with the CEO pledge on this. You get a playmat and some acrylic tokens, totally unnecessary stuff, but I did it. And that is Star Tycoon. Tim, go ahead and rip me apart on this one.
Okay, no, so totally generic name notwithstanding, the production, the artwork is really cool here. I like this cartoonish style that they got going on here, so I can understand that now that I'm looking at it. And also it does seem like it's going to be a nice light midweight game, which makes it approachable and easier to get to the table, which I have to say may not be my favorite type of game, but at least you can get them played. And looking at this Kickstarter page really quickly, I think this is a game that is, as long as it turns out to be fun, could be something you can get a lot of play out of. So all right, I'll let you off the hook this time. It looks like it's not too expensive either.
Yeah, it was reasonably priced. And I think that was a big appeal too, was the lightweight nature of it, and get my not so board gamey friends to be like, hey, check this one out. Let's see how it goes, and get it played quickly with a bunch of neat components and outer space planets and stuff.
Yeah, one of the quotes on here says it kind of combines stockpile and splendor, which means like, okay, light engine building with some fun little kind of market stuff. I played Stockpile. I don't know if you guys have ever played that, but I got a chance to play that again this last weekend. It's been a while, and that's a super fun game. So, like there can be fun in those types of games. You got it on your shelf behind you there is what you're pointing at.
I have it on my shelf behind me still in shrink wrap. Another Kickstarter.
I'd say you might have, that's a game, Adam, that you should actually bust out with your non-gamer friends. It's very approachable, and it can be a lot of fun, especially if your version of it has a couple of the modules that give a little variety into it. It can be a pretty good game.
I have the expansions and stuff too. Yeah. So it sounds super fun to me. I really this game looked along that same vein. So I was excited to back it with the space theme.
Cool.
Yeah. And I just love the fact that the name of this thing sounds like one of these really crappy 1970s pinball machines that I love. Nice. Future Spa or Xenon.
How about the subtitle on this one? Star Tycoon, Build Your Galactic Corporation. Really, really grabbed me there, Adam.
Ooh,
all right.
Wow.
Intriguing.
Anything with a colonized name, bring it, baby. All right. Well, my number 2 is my second cheat of the night. So I'm trying to catch up with Tim here. It's a second game that is being carried over from my list last year. It's Batman Gotham City Chronicles. Not season 1, not season 2, but season 3, which is designed by Frederic Henry and published by Monolith Games. This one, I just cannot help but be super excited about. Same reason as last year. This is a game that's been sitting on my shelf. I've got an 18-wheeler worth of content for Batman Gotham City Chronicles, and anybody who's listened to the show has heard me talk about this ad nauseum about how much I think the game is cool, but it's just too hard to get played. And this is the edition that provides a single-player option, a solo option, which I'm super excited about because that is one way that I will actually get this game played. And the other piece of it, which is, interestingly, it sounds like it shouldn't be a big deal, but it is a huge deal, is it's a rewritten instruction manual by Paul Grogan, because the original instruction manual for this game was an absolute abomination. I mean, that was a complete, it was horrendous. And so hopefully this is the one that'll actually make it a little bit more understandable. And of course, having a solo option will make it a little bit more playable. And then once I played it more and actually can get it under my belt, much more likely that I'll feel confident busting this out with somebody and saying, hey, try this game with me. I can walk you through it. I can tell you how to play it. Because right now, if I wanted to play this with anybody other than, say, Tim, who is very patient with it, it'd be like 20 minutes, half an hour, I don't know, 45 minutes into the teach, they'd be like, I'm just going to shoot myself. So thank you, Batman Gotham City Chronicles Season 3, for making that not a necessity. Nobody needs to die here.
Chris, I was actually thinking about this game recently, and one thing that you might be coming up on is that once you do know how to play it and can teach it pretty well, you might actually find that you and Nathan could play this one and get a lot of fun out of it. Because I think especially the villain side, if I remember right, was a little bit more straightforward to play. There wasn't quite as many choices to make. And I'm guessing that, again, once you have a good handle on it, you teach him how to play those villains, he's going to have a blast trying to take you down and stop you from completing your goals in there. And you guys might find a lot of fun in it. So, who knows? You'll have to report back once you get it and see if that ever happens.
Yeah, maybe. Just like real life. All kinds of fun and taking me down and stopping me from reaching my goals. What's wrong with you, kid? Just kidding.
That sounds like just having a midlife crisis right there. Well, my number 2 game this year, this is kind of a no-brainer game for me. So I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a board game nominated solo game called Resist that we talked about briefly on our Golden Geek nomination episode a couple months back. And this is by Trevor Benjamin, Roger Tankersley, and David Thompson. Mm-hmm. And this is a simple little card-based solo game that's war-themed. That's what Resist was anyway. And it just got me excited. I don't even know exactly how it plays, but it sounds like it's like a 20-minute game. Get in, make some tough decisions. It's supposed to be challenging, but very variable because it's based on these decks of cards. And something about being able to reveal yourself as somebody that's working in the resistance and get more powerful effects, or hide and get less powerful effects. It just sounded fun. So they put out a new game up on Kickstarter shortly after we talked about that, and it's called Witchcraft. And this is what I understand is basically the same game, maybe a couple little minor adjustments to the rules with a new theme on it. This is about, basically witches trying to hide but still try to fend off monsters back in the early days of America when they were being hunted themselves. And so I thought this is a perfect time to try this. And this was like a $20 game to back on Kickstarter. So it was a no-brainer. And I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's a game that I can at least jump into, probably learn quickly, get a few plays out of it. And, I think it'll be worth the money.
Good stock on that one. A good pedigree there with David Thompson, who does all of the Undaunted series. So I think you're in safe hands. My number 2 is a game called Ceres, Ceres, like the asteroid. Ceres is the name of the game. Gustav Sundström is the designer. This game is another space sci-fi theme where you're going to go out and mine some asteroids. The price was decent on this one. The weight looked about right. There's some fun card play here. And guess what? This is a worker placement game that looked fairly interesting to me. There's a common pool of workers that you're trying to draw from, and you're going to send them out to the asteroid belt, which is kind of neat because this thing is in constant flux and it's rotating around. So you're not going to have access to all parts of it. You have to time your flight out there if you want to get into this inner core of asteroids to go mine these things. So I thought that was kind of cool. In addition to the worker placement, looks pretty neat to me. You can draft these cards and they can change a card from one type of worker placement to a different type of worker placement. So It's dynamic. The way you're doing this, the card play looks fantastic. The worker placement looks cool. And the spinny asteroid thing looks cool. I love outer space, and I love science and science fiction and hard science. Price was right, $60 for the standard pledge on this one, which is what I went for. And I think I added some of the expansions too after the fact. So that is Ceres. You guys heard of this one or seen anything about it?
No, but this looks really interesting. And Adam, say more if you know about this spinny asteroid thing you're talking about. Is that where you're putting your pieces for the worker placement? Because it's a very interesting looking board, and that's the piece that stands out to me.
Yeah, so that is just a small part of the game. You have these, I don't know if they're probes or little mining probes you're going to launch out there. So you have to take some kind of action to launch them out there, and you get them. I don't know if they have to enter from that outer orbit and kind of sneak into the inner orbit from there. Some sort of timing gimmick that you're going to have to plan ahead for to get it to those innermost rings. So I thought that was that's about all I know. But I know that probably doesn't really answer anything about the thing. But if you scroll down to, I don't know, about a quarter of the way down the page, you can see this thing spinning around, and it explains it there if you want to read more about it. I did take a look at the rule book at one point, and it looked solid. So excited to get my hands on this one. And the latest update, the ships are on the way. This thing is going to be probably in my hands in about 2 months. So a very quick turnaround on Kickstarter, which is quite refreshing.
Well, I don't know anything about this game, and I'm looking at, production looks unique enough, and I'm really excited, Adam, that you're really welcoming the worker placement game into your world. So that's cool that you backed
Well, let's get too excited about stuff.
Simmer down now.
I have a serious question for you, though, Adam, because the 4 games you've talked about so far, I've never heard of. They've not been on my radar at all. Where do you hear about, how do you get introduced to some of these games that you end up backing? Are you hearing about these from podcasts that you listen to where they're previewing games? Or are you just browsing Kickstarter all the time? What's going on?
I already forget the first few. I think Galactic Renaissance was probably Board Game Barrage from a few months ago. They talked about that, so that got me interested. Some of these are just targeted Kickstarters, like game projects you might be interested in. I'll take a look around, and I try to look for, I like taking a little bit of risk on smaller developers, smaller designers, something that's not going to do mass market, because why Kickstarter if it's going to be mass market? I say that, and then of course I did Galactic Renaissance, it's going to be available everywhere. But a game like this or Star Tycoon, I don't think it's going to be widely available. So I try to take a look at some of these more niche, boutique kind of games that do something interesting, and it might not be available other places. And I do take a look at the rules. I joke a lot about it, but I do take a look at these rule books and see if it's solid. I'll spend a few hours watching videos on the gameplay of all these and make sure that they do have solid mechanics and something's going to interest me. So yeah, I do a little bit of homework. I spend time clicking around and dig around in Kickstarter to try to find some of these more unique, interesting games. And it's fun for me to kind of look for some of these. Maybe they're gems and maybe they're not gems, but hopefully they turn out to be something decent. Fun part of the hobby for me is looking for these games from designers that aren't as well known.
Nice. Well, I hope it turns out to be a gem. And if it is, then maybe we'll get to play it at some point. And
there's nothing quite as exciting as being the guy who can say, I played so-and-so's games back before they were popular, right? We all love that.
Right. Imperium the Contention is blowing up now. And even though it didn't really work for us, that was one of these $40, $50 games. A local guy, Gary Doretsky, had him on the show. And now it's a big hit and he's making Slay the Spire. So that was kind of fun to find that one.
You heard it here first. All right, well, getting down to the very end of this list, the pinnacle of all the games coming in from crowdfunding this year, hopefully, my number 1 is The Fox Experiment, which is designed by Elizabeth Hargrave and Jeff Frazier and is published by Pandasaurus Games. This is another one that we did a review of, and that's what tipped me off that this game was going to be a really good one to back. That and the fact that it was designed by Elizabeth Hargrave. I love Elizabeth Hargrave's games, and even more than the gameplay. The gameplay is great, but I love the fact that she brings real-world science-based, natural science-based themes to her games. And I just find that fascinating. And this one in particular has the great story behind it of this Russian experiment that went on for generations, might even still be going on, where they tried to breed friendly dog type of characteristics into foxes. I mean, what a great story. I read up on it when we played the game and was just fascinated that this is actually real. Beyond that, the gameplay mechanisms were fun. Anybody who's interested can go back and listen to our review that we did on this one a little while back. Really enjoyable game. I think it was overall very well received. The thing that really kind of hammered home for me how excited I am to get this game was about, I don't know, a month or so ago. And I was talking to my wife about playing a game. I was like, hey, let's play a game of something. And she said to me, hey, don't you have like a Fox game coming from Elizabeth Hargrave? And I said, oh yeah, I do. It may not be for a couple of years, but it's coming. I mean, the fact that she was excited to play it makes me excited to play it, because that means I get more games played. Fun game, something that I'm sure I can play with my family that they'll enjoy. And that to me is a win-win-win.
Chris, have you heard about her new game that's, I think, coming to Kickstarter pretty soon, but it's called Undergrove? Do you know anything about that?
Very little. I know I've heard of it. It's the mushroom-based one, right? It's the mycology game, which is weird because all of a sudden there's like this bizarre confluence of there's a lot of mycology games coming out. I can't remember the names of the others, but there's at least 2 or 3 others that are out there, which is a little bit strange.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think all of her nature themed games have been interesting and kind of unique. Obviously she took off with Wingspan, but I think it's neat that every game seems to really be a completely different set of mechanisms. And I also thought the Fox experiment was really fun. So I'll be keeping an eye on Undergrove as well when it comes out to Kickstarter pretty soon. That's going to be published by AEG as well. Yeah. All right. Well, my number one, top of the list today, is Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs. This is a tiny little box solo only version of Gloomhaven. I've talked a little bit about Frosthaven recently, and I have to say that the more I've played it, everything I said in the past didn't do it justice, because it's continued to grow on me and get better and better. The more we explore it, the more new figures we get and new characters we uncover, the more new mechanisms that kind of reveal themselves through the campaign of this game, Frosthaven. It's been great. So I got more and more excited about this, and they put out a new second edition of Gloomhaven, as well as a reprint of Frosthaven and some other stuff on a Kickstarter campaign. And one of the things they surprised everybody with was this little tiny version of Gloomhaven called Buttons and Bugs. And the intent, I think this was based on a fan-made game called Gloomholden that became popular a little while ago, a little print and play game. The idea being that you could basically do everything with like what a normal Gloomhaven scenario would be with just cards. And so they kind of took that. I think they've developed it quite a bit, added more components to it, but I think it's still going to be in like an Age of Galaxy size box. So, fairly small size, compact, quicker to play, more straightforward. And I think that could be really fun for me. So I'm excited. Again, this and like Witchcraft are the size of solo games that I want to play. If I'm going to play a solo game, it'll be 20, 30 minutes. And my understanding is that's what I'll be getting here with Gloomhaven. So I'm looking forward to Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs.
Looking at the pictures on BGG, and they actually show the Buttons and Bugs box next to the standard Gloomhaven box. And you're right, this thing is a fraction of the size, maybe a 10th, 12th even. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think it is literally just cards, maybe a few counters or something like that. So it's going to be pretty small. And it's kind of an interesting concept too, that they took this mini version of Gloomhaven, and the story has something to do with like you got turned small. And so now you've got to deal with like the monsters or like normal size insects and stuff like that. So I think it's clever that they themed it in that way as well.
My number one game that I'm looking forward to, this is a giant box of stuff, but guess what? It's another sort of hard science fiction based theme. This is a kind of an economic entanglement game with some shared infrastructure. This is Frozen Frontier. This is published by Cosmodrome Games, which did one of my favorite games. They did Smartphone Inc. And Ivan Lashin was even consulted a little bit, or he's buddies with the designer. So that piqued my interest on this game. I think I mentioned this one to Tim, or maybe both of you guys. And Tim took a look. He's like, oh, these circles look dumb. Yeah, maybe they're not too enchanting, but it's an organized board. You've got your player mats with all these little types of buildings, small buildings and giant buildings and other little cubes and nuggets and stuff. The most intriguing part to me is you have this little player board with your little cubes or qubits or whatever, and that kind of is your economy. And you're going to be putting those things out and collecting stuff. And then kind of at the end of this game, you're going to collect those back. If you're the owner of that property where somebody's put those cubes, you're going to collect those back and grabbing them. So those will kind of exchange hands in a different kind of economic market, which I thought that was a pretty fascinating mechanism, the way that all works together. I went on Tabletop Simulator and played this one for a couple rounds, and it gets going right away. You're doing stuff from round one. You're researching, you're climbing these tracks. Nothing slow about it. It's streamlined, something you would expect from something Ivan Lashin had his hand in. It gets going right away. I had a lot of fun playing this one. You're moving your big old ship diagonally around this board, up, down, and left and right, and then you're either building or collecting or doing some stuff right away, all with the end goal of, I don't know, getting the most money or whatever it is, trying to collect helium-3 or something like that on this frozen planet. A whole bunch of lore here, a whole bunch of stuff, efficiently done economic game with this beautiful artwork once again and this sci-fi thought-provoking theme for me. That's Frozen Frontier. Tim, are you going to make fun of this one again?
No, not at all. I was wondering, I thought you said you were going to play this on Tabletop Simulator. So I'm glad to hear you did like the play of it.
Yeah.
I've only played a few Cosmodrome games, and I will say that they have some really cool productions and cool games, the ones that I've played so far. So
what's the other one? Aquatica is another one of their...
Aquatica is the other one, that I've played. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a solid game. So glad to hear you're still excited about it, Adam.
I look forward to this one. For no reason in particular, anything else you want to add include that we haven't talked about yet?
I don't have any more honorable mentions, but I already kind of gave you my honorable mention at the outset when I talked about Dawn of Madness. I think the thing that I wanted to reflect on just a little bit was kind of where I'm sitting with crowdfunding these days, because when I was new to the hobby, crowdfunding was exciting because it was a way to get in on all these interesting projects. And I found that I was just backing anything that looked cool to me. And the more games I got, the more that I realized I just don't have the I just don't have the shelf space. I just don't have the time. I mean, the number of games that I have now that I'm not getting played, the shelf of shame, which I never had before, has actually gotten pretty big, and that's a little bit embarrassing. I don't want to have a shelf of shame. I want to play the games that I have. And so the more discriminating I've gotten about the games that I'm buying and the fewer games that I'm buying, crowdfunding just doesn't have the same space in my life that it did when I first started out in the hobby. But at the same time, I'm still interested in the question of how have I done with my crowdfunding games? And so I did a little bit of an analysis, and I culled out all the games that were, expansions, or they were updated components. Like, for example, Terraforming Mars. I got the big box expansion on that, and it's wonderful, but it's not a new game. I wasn't treading any new ground there. I was just buying new upgraded components. But I took all the ones that were actual original games and then sort of graded them into 3 categories. One was ones that I'm backed and I'm sorry that I did. Ones that I backed and I'm meh about. In other words, not terrible games, but I'm just not super excited about it. And then ones that I'm really happy that I backed. And when I actually looked at it that way, I was at 50% happy that I backed them. Glad I backed them, would do it over again. I was 15% with the ones I was meh, kind of could go either way about, which means I probably would lean toward not doing it again, but only 15%. And then 35% was ones that I'm actually sorry that I backed, that if I had to go back and do it again, I absolutely would not do it. But that's about 50-50. And even the ones where I was sorry that I backed it, it generally wasn't games that I was disgusted by. Like, how could this game have come out? How could somebody have published this thing? It was ones that just weren't to my taste. I mean, there's some games in there that are perfectly good ones.
Except Marvel United, you mean?
Well, I mean, people love Marvel United. I mean, I think I'm the outlier there. But there's a bunch of games like that are probably perfectly good games, and they're well done. And I mean, Eric Lang, you can't really argue with that and say, well, what was he thinking? So 50-50 isn't awesome, but if you enjoy the enterprise of backing crowd-funded games and seeing the process carry through, as I tend to do, then, I mean, I guess you draw your own conclusions. Is that worth it? Is it not worth it? I don't know. It's not worth it for me at this point because I'm backing away from buying a lot of games. But if I got to a point where I lived in a gigantic house and was playing games every night of the week, maybe I'd start doing it again.
Before Tim jumps in here and rains on everybody's parade about crowdfunding games, I would be very interested to see the splits on that as time went on. So your early Kickstarters versus your more recent, like within the last year and a half, I would be surprised if the happiness factor didn't go up with the more recent backs. At least that's what I would suspect for myself, but maybe that's not true. Now I want to do this exercise. I need to get a hold of that spreadsheet, Chris. I need to fill it, or I can make one of my own and fill this out and see how it goes. I'm going to add a time axis into that too, or at least a time filter. Pivot table. Give me some filters on that spreadsheet, please.
I could probably do yours for you, Adam, because I think we back a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah, right.
It's interesting. I've never been a huge backer anyway, and I'm just guessing here, probably at least 75%, 70% happy with the games that I backed, or at least got some enjoyment out of them before I moved them on. So I think I've even got a pretty good record. But there's one reason why, even though occasionally a game will catch my attention, that I'm probably going to stop backing, and that is shipping.
Yeah.
Maybe I wasn't paying attention to it before, or maybe it really has gone up as much as it seems, but it just seems crazy to pay sometimes 50% as much as the game itself just to get it shipped, when you can get free shipping anywhere once it's in retail. You can get it from Amazon. You can get it from Game Nerds. You can go to your local Target and pick up these games. Sometimes you can go to your local game store. So it's so easy to get games and not pay that premium on shipping, that when you're paying, they don't even have to go through a distributor. So they're getting more money from you as a consumer than they ever will down the line. And then you're also paying for that much shipping. Like, how is that a value to us as backers? It's not of course you're helping some of these, games get made. You may be. Are you really though? Were you the one that pushed it over that pledge level that they needed to succeed? And also, was this not already a publisher that was probably going to put the game out anyway, but they're putting it up here for marketing purposes? So, there's some element that we may be helping games get made, but I just don't see the value in it anymore. I'm telling you guys that Cyclades Legendary Edition, I wanted that game with all my heart. And it was, even at $100 with all the add-ons and the upgraded stuff, like, that's not that bad. But then $150 for this fairly light game that I'm sure I can pick up in retail for $60 in a year and a half, 2 months after everyone else has it, I just can't justify that to myself. So I think I'm very unlikely to back any more games on Kickstarter or crowdfunded, unless they're pretty small games. These like $15, $20 games, small card games, things like that really catch my attention. I know they're going to be turned around quickly, and I know they're going to be $7 to $10 in shipping. I think that's more likely what I'm going to be seeing going forward.
Again, I think subconsciously, now that you're bringing this up, Tim, like Ankh is a good example. That was a Kickstarter game. I didn't back it on Kickstarter because it's going to be available everywhere. Why would I pay that much in shipping when I can just buy it from, I could say, Amazon or wherever in a year or so after the Kickstarter happens? And then I don't have to pay anything for shipping, or I can go to the game store and just buy it there. So that's why I'm kind of leaning towards these games that have smaller sort of print runs that maybe aren't going to make it to retail. They're a little harder to find. I think there's still like a little bit of a place.
Yeah.
For some of these games. So of course, like the Peterson goofs, that's a big mistake. And that's something I'm gonna have to learn from. But some of these other games, Ceres and Frozen Frontier, might not make it to the big stores or might not be widely available after this first print run. So you got to pay a little bit of a premium for shipping on some of these things that might not be available. And then I think that's when it maybe becomes worth it. Of course, then the game still has to be good, and then maybe it won't be available after that. So then it becomes something kind of special. But again, that's something that's rare, doesn't happen all that often. That's kind of, again, where the fun is for me, and it makes it worth doing. And that's, again, it's a rare case.
I do like, Adam, that your list this year was all at least what looked like interesting games that were not just throw as many minis in a box. Like, they were the mechanisms why they at least seemed like they were attempting to do something unique. And I think that's really cool to explore those versus just like, hey, look at these great minis. Look at this awesome production. I'm going to buy everything in this thing. And then maybe you never get to look at it. Yeah. One of the other things that used to drive me to Kickstarter a little bit was like the kind of the Kickstarter exclusives, or like the things that you get. But all that stuff I keep finding over and over again, it tends to be content that you kind of never want to play with anyway. Like, it's either content that you don't get the game played enough to ever start adding in those modules or those expansions, or it's like, hey, you just got 3 extra cards in this deck of 150. Oops, you never saw that in the 3 times you got it played. So who cares?
Yeah.
So but that's cool, Adam. You have quirky picks. You always have had the quirkiest taste in our group, I think, and your Kickstarter backers represent that in a good way. But you definitely brought some gems to the table for us. So looking forward to seeing some of those come out again.
Some gems and some not so gems. So yeah, it's all part of it.
As long as you go through the rule book reading and trying it yourself instead of before you bring it to the table, then that's cool.
Yeah. Okay, one final game I had my eye on and that I did recently back after hearing about it on Board Game Barrage. I think it was Mark. I'm sorry if it was, I know it wasn't Kellen. I'm sorry if it was you, Neelan. I think it was Mark who talks about it beautifully. This is a game called Tycoon, India 1981. This is another sort of economic entanglement game. The map is beautiful. It has a big picture of India there, and it's shortly after, if Mark is to be believed from Board Game Garage, which is no reason why he shouldn't be believed, after the British have left and Indian companies are trying to take back the country, and you're trying to take control economically and develop the infrastructure here. So there's a couple auctions that go around, and there's some interesting mechanisms. All the economies of the different players are tied together. One thing here is going to affect what happens. Another player's here, another player's here, another player's here. A few different paths to victory. The win conditions sounded amazing as well. So there's two sort of score trackers, and if you are the champion on both of those, you win the game. But if you're the champion, if you're winning one and another person's winning the other one by the end of the game, then it goes to this other currency called favor. And whoever has the most favor becomes the winner. Economic entanglement, some fascinating win conditions, a neat auction, a couple neat auction mechanisms, a quick and not overly long auction mechanisms. This game has me very interested. I backed that one as well. It seems like a reasonable price from, again, a non-mainstream developer and designer. So that's Tycoon India 1981.
Adam, I'm so glad you brought this one up because I actually just heard that discussion a couple days ago as well, and it had me really intrigued, Mark's description of it. So, this is the first time I'm looking at the Kickstarter, and it actually looks like a really cool production too. I was in my mind it was going to be a fairly dry, brownish hero, but the box artwork looks pretty nice and stuff. So yeah, this is cool. I would like to try this after hearing all about it.
Yeah, it looks great. Go listen to Mark. He talks about it beautifully over on Board Game Garage.
I'm fascinated because when you said this, I heard 1891 because what else would you expect? And then I looked at it and saw that, no, you actually said 1981. So there you go, 1981 in the house.
Bump some police tunes and get some steam going in the background and get some cars going. There you go.
And this is actually designed by an Indian designer, and I think
that's right,
being published out of India as well too. So again, something that we don't see a whole lot. So that's a cool reason to back it.
Yeah.
So cool, Adam. This is on your list so far. I'm glad you pulled it out in the last minute, but this is the one I'm most excited about.
Oh, okay.
We do have a couple quick reviews I wanted to mention. As I said last week on the show, we had many reviews come in over the last couple of weeks, so we're going to be catching up. But keep them coming, if it takes us a while to catch up, that's okay. So if you haven't heard us mention your review yet, it'll probably be coming still, but I'll jump through a couple here really quickly. These were reviews that were left on Apple Podcasts. The first one was from P. Haupt in the US. The title is "They Cost Me a Lot of Money," in a good way. The 5 stars. They said, "My current favorite board game podcast. The reviews are very easy to understand, and they've made me purchase way too many games." Well, I hope you're enjoying the games that we've forced you to purchase and you're getting some love out of them. Thanks for the comment, though. That's awesome to hear that you're enjoying the podcast. The second one was from Bones 51972 in the US. Title was Top Notch, and it was a 5-star review. Such a great show, and I really enjoy the topics and polls. Keep up the good work. Thanks, Bones. Glad you're enjoying it. And the last one was Wedgel out of Canada, and the title was Hot Take. 5 stars. Hot take. This podcast will share their opinions with you unfiltered. It's appreciated, and I enjoy listening to them during my drive. The opinions I do not always agree with, but I like the varied perspective. Keep up the great work. Thanks, Wedgel. I am glad you're enjoying the show, and I'm glad your feelings aren't getting hurt when we say mean stuff about the games you like. But we are just trying to be honest. I had a few people mention just on social media recently that they were shocked by some of our commentaries. Expeditions, I think, was mentioned, and like Heat, because these are generally very well-loved games right now, very popular games. And we just didn't get, I think, quite as much enjoyment as some other people are. But, all we're really doing is sitting here and just talking about our honest feelings and how a game made us feel. So hopefully that's still valuable to you, even if you don't agree with us. Glad you all are enjoying the show. If you like us, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. And come find us on Facebook, on Blue Sky, on Threads, probably anywhere you got social media, you can find us. Maybe even MySpace. Go check there. Who knows? You could find us on MySpace.
Friendster.
Until next week, take care, everybody.
Good night, all.
Bye-bye.